For much of its early history, the United States tried to stay out of global politics. These thin sand oceans were seen as protection. This approach was called isolationism. The idea was simple: avoid entangling alliances and foreign wars. For decades, this strategy seemed to work. The United States grew economically while Europe dealt with repeated conflicts. World War I challenged that belief. The war showed that economic and political shocks could cross oceans faster than armies. Even after entering the war, the United States tried to return to isolation. Many believed global engagement was a mistake. That belief collapsed with World War II. The conflict reached American shores directly. The war revealed a harsh reality. Isolation did not prevent global threats from forming. By 1945, the United States faced a different world. Former allies were exhausted, economies were shattered, and power vacuums were everywhere. Staying out was no longer an option. The question was not whether the US would engage, but how. Out of this moment came a new strategy. The United States would build alliances, not walls. After World War II, much of the world was physically and economically destroyed. Europe and parts of Asia were struggling to rebuild basic stability. The United States emerged from the war largely intact. Its factories, infrastructure, and financial system remained strong. American leaders believed recovery was not just humanitarian. Economic collapse abroad could lead to political instability and conflict. In response, the USA launched the Marshall Plan. Billions of dollars were sent to rebuild European economies. This aid was strategic. It tied economic recovery to cooperation with the United States. At the same time, new global institutions were created. Their goal was to prevent economic chaos from returning. The US dollar became the anchor of the global financial system. This gave Washington enormous influence over global trade. Economic recovery alone was not enough. Security guarantees were needed to prevent another major war. In 1949, the United States helped form NATO. An attack on one member would be treated as an attack on all. For the first time, the USA committed to permanent military alliances in peacetime. This marked a historic shift in policy. These alliances were not only about defense. They also created predictable trade and investment relationships. Allies gained access to American markets and security. In return, the USA gained influence and stability. This system was designed to lock in cooperation. Breaking away would come at a significant cost. By the early Cold War, the United States had built a global network. Economic and military ties reinforced each other. This blueprint shaped international relations for decades. And it still defines many US alliances today. Europe was the first region to fully anchor itself to the United States after World War II. Shared trauma created a strong sense of urgency. For many European countries, the memory of war was still fresh. Security guarantees were seen as essential, not optional. NATO became the backbone of this relationship. It institutionalized cooperation between the USA and its European partners. Beyond defense, economic integration deepened ties. Transatlantic trade grew into one of the largest economic relationships in history. For decades, this partnership appeared stable and predictable. Shared values reinforced shared interests. But tensions gradually emerged. European countries began questioning how much responsibility the US should carry for their defense. Disagreements became more visible during the Iraq War. Several European allies openly opposed US military action. Despite political differences, NATO endured. Institutional ties proved stronger than temporary disputes. The Trump era brought new strain. American leaders questioned the value of long-standing alliances in transactional terms. European governments responded by discussing greater strategic autonomy. The goal was not separation, but flexibility. Russia's actions in Eastern Europe reshaped the conversation. Security concerns quickly returned to the center of European policy. Military spending increased across Europe. NATO coordination regained urgency after years of debate. At the same time, economic ties remained deeply integrated. Trade, finance, and technology continued to bind both sides. The transatlantic relationship today is more complex than before. It is cooperative, but no longer unquestioned. Europe remains America's closest group of allies. But the relationship has matured, shaped by shared history and evolving realities. After World War II, Asia became a central focus of American strategy. The region was rebuilding while new power balances were forming. Unlike Europe, Asia lacked a single multilateral security structure. The United States instead built a network of bilateral alliances. Japan became the cornerstone of this system. Once an enemy, it was transformed into a key US ally. The US guaranteed Japan's security, while Japan focused on economic recovery. This arrangement shaped decades of stability. On the Korean Peninsula, the stakes were even higher. The Korean War locked the USA into a permanent security role in Northeast Asia. South Korea became both a frontline ally and an economic partner. Security cooperation and trade grew side by side. Taiwan represents one of the most sensitive relationships. It sits at the intersection of security commitments and strategic ambiguity. The US supports Taiwan without a formal defense treaty. This uncertainty is designed to deter conflict rather than invite it. Southeast Asia occupies a different position. Countries in the region balance US security ties with economic links to China. Rather than choosing sides, many pursue hedging strategies. Flexibility is seen as a form of survival. Economic ties across Asia expanded rapidly. Trade, manufacturing, and supply chains bound the region together. China's rise altered the regional balance. Economic interdependence grew alongside strategic competition. For the US, Asia became both an opportunity and a challenge. Security commitments now coexist with economic rivalry. Security partnerships deepened in response. Military exercises and regional coordination increased. At the same time, Asian allies sought reassurance. They wanted US presence, but not confrontation. This balancing act defines US relations in Asia today. Security, trade, and tension coexist in every decision. Unlike Europe, there is no single alliance that defines the region. The system remains flexible and fragile. This flexibility allows adaptation, but it also increases uncertainty. Small shifts can have large consequences. For the United States, Asia now represents the most consequential arena of global strategy. How the US navigates these relationships will shape the future of global order. The Middle East has never fit neatly into America's alliance system. Interests here often outweigh ideals. Unlike Europe or Asia, alliances in the region were shaped less by shared values and more by strategic necessity. Energy security played a central role. Access to oil shaped decades of American policy. Saudi Arabia became a key partner. The relationship was built on stability and energy, not political alignment. In return for security guarantees, oil markets remained relatively predictable. This arrangement lasted for decades. Israel represents a different type of alliance. Security cooperation here is driven by shared strategic goals and political ties. Military aid and intelligence cooperation made Israel one of America's closest partners in the region. These partnerships also created tension. Regional conflicts often pulled the US into complex local dynamics. Iran emerged as a central challenge. Its opposition reshaped regional alignments and American strategy. Containment replaced cooperation. Sanctions and deterrence became primary tools of engagement. American involvement increased after conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. Long-term commitments followed. Over time, public support in the US declined. Costs became more visible than gains. At the same time, regional partners questioned long-term American commitment. The Middle East relationship remains transactional. Stability, not alignment, continues to guide decisions. For the United States, the region remains vital, but increasingly difficult to navigate. Not all influence comes from military power. For decades, the United States has relied heavily on economic tools to shape global behavior. Access to the American market became one of the strongest incentives for cooperation. Trade agreements reinforced political relationships. Trade agreements were rarely just about tariffs. They also set standards for labor, regulation, and intellectual property. Financial institutions amplified this influence. Loans and development funding often came with expectations. Sanctions became another powerful tool. They allowed the US to punish behavior without direct conflict. Because so many transactions rely on the US dollar, sanctions often have global reach. However, economic pressure also carries risks. Overuse can push countries to seek alternatives. Some countries began reducing dependence on the dollar and US-controlled systems. Even so, economic influence remains central to American diplomacy. Markets often speak louder than threats. For the United States, diplomacy through economics has become as important as diplomacy through force. Alliances are strongest during calm periods. But their true value is revealed during moments of crisis. During the Cold War, disagreements were often kept behind closed doors. Unity was prioritized over public conflict. After the Cold War, unity became harder to maintain. New conflicts tested shared priorities. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan exposed these differences. Allies supported the US in varying degrees. Some partnerships weakened under prolonged conflict. Public opinion began influencing alliance decisions. At times, American leadership itself became a source of uncertainty. Allies questioned long-term consistency. Shifts in US domestic politics were closely watched abroad. Elections had global implications. Despite tension, most alliances adapted rather than collapsed. Flexibility proved more valuable than rigidity. Countries adjusted expectations. Absolute alignment gave way to selective cooperation. These tests did not end America's alliances. They reshaped them for a more uncertain world. Today, the world is no longer defined by a single dominant power. New centers of influence continue to emerge. American alliances now operate in a more competitive environment. Partners weigh cooperation against independence. Rather than collapsing, many alliances have become more pragmatic. Commitment is shaped by interests, not ideology alone. For the United States, maintaining trust may matter more than maintaining dominance. So the question remains, in a changing world, can alliances built decades ago still hold? Share your thoughts, and if this breakdown helped, consider liking and subscribing for more stories like this.